An explosion on a scale comparable to that of Beirut occurred on April 16, 1947, in the United States at the port of Texas City. It was the largest industrial disaster in U.S. history on April 16, 1947, in Texas City. The French ship Grand Juan exploded, destroying thousands of buildings and killing hundreds of sailors and residents. The Benjamin R. Curtis was built in November 1942 by Joshua Handy's shipyard in Sunnyvale, California. The vessel was 135 meters long, 17.6 meters wide, and 10.5 meters deep in the hold. It had a gross tonnage of 7,176 registered tons. During the war it sailed in the Pacific Ocean, and at the end of the war it was transferred to France for assistance in the reconstruction of Europe and was renamed to Grand Camp after a place in Normandy. On April 16, 1947, the Grand Camp was standing by to be loaded at the big chemical manufacturing center of Texas City. It had peanuts, sisal, milling machines, and, most importantly, 2,300 tons of fertilizer ammonium nitrate in its holds. One must describe at once what Texas City was like then. It was 6 refineries, oil storage tanks, a chemical plant, chemical warehouses, and 50 firefighters per city. Fertilizer produced in the Nebraska and Iowa factories was being brought into town, and on that day, along with Garcan, the steamboats Wilson B. Keene, 300 tons of saltpeter, and the High Flyer, ammonium nitrate and 2,000 tons of sulfur. It should be noted that the fertilizers in the factories were packed in paper bags, which was a violation of fire safety. The containers for such substances should be metal. However, the loaders were allowed to smoke while loading, which probably caused the tragedy. Someone threw a cigarette butt into the hold. Around 8 a.m. on April 16, the workers smelled a pungent smoke near Hold 4, and when they removed the hatch covers, they saw a jet of smoke coming from between the side and a stack of 100-pound bags of fertilizer. First they started pouring water from mugs and buckets. Then soda acid fire extinguishers were brought in. But that made the smoke billow even worse. Someone guessed to roll fire hoses around the deck, but the chief mate of the captain forbade to connect them to the ship's fire line. "Don't you dare do that. You'll ruin the cargo." At 8:25 a.m. the fire alarm was given and 4 fire engines arrived at the ship, but by then the temperature around the ship began to rise at such a rate that it was no longer possible to flood it with water. Meanwhile, the unusual spectacle of the burning steamer attracted a large number of onlookers on the waterfront and piers. Attempts by the police to disperse the crowd were unsuccessful. Among other things, the ship's fifth hold contained 16 crates of rifle ammunition at 150 pounds, 70 kilograms, each. When the fire was discovered, the crew hurriedly unloaded them, but only 3 of the 16 could be raised, after which the chief mate gave the order to abandon the ship. There was a serious threat of explosion and it was decided to use the steam extinguishing system. The hatch covers were closed and steam was released into the holds, but no one took into account that ammonium nitrate can only be extinguished by large volumes of water. In a few minutes the hatch covers were torn off and tongues of flame appeared from the hold. By that time the crew had been evacuated and only 27 firefighters and the captain were left on board. At 9:12 a.m., an incredible explosion ripped the Garcan apart. The harbor floor was exposed for a few seconds, after which a high wave struck the docks and the ship standing there. The residents of Louisiana, who were 250 miles away from the place of the explosion, felt the shaking. The explosion was recorded by seismic stations in Denver and Colorado. In Houston, 40 miles away, the windows were blown out of their windows. Many parts of the ship weighing a ton were later found within 2 miles of the explosion site. A 2-ton piece of steam engine, flying 1 mile through the air, fell on a car passing through the downtown square. All the buildings near the docks were destroyed, and a hail of red-hot metal and burning debris rained down on the city. Hundreds of sailors, dock workers, and onlookers were killed, and many in the city were injured by flying glass. The steamers High Flyer and Wilson Keene, though enclosed by most of the ironclad warehouse, were blown off their moorings and severely damaged. A blast wave knocked down 2 small planes that fell into the bay. The oil-laden 50-foot-long barge Longhorn 2, moored at the bow of the Grand Can, was thrown like a splinter onto the pier and sank 70 meters from its edge onto the roofs of passenger cars standing in a row, crushing them. Elsewhere, in the company parking lots, the wave covered 600 cars. But that was only the beginning of the disaster. The red-hot shards of metal and burning bales of sisal descended on the city after the explosion, causing hundreds of fires. One after the other, the oil and gas tanks of the 6 refineries burst into flames with a rapid chain reaction. Oil was leaking from burst oil pipelines, which ignited at the first hit of a red-hot piece of metal. Warehouses burned, houses burned, and whole streets burned. The port area was cut off from the city by a wall of fire. At the new Monsanto chemical plant in the port area, 154 of the 450 workers on the morning shift were killed when the Grand Can exploded. 200 were seriously injured. The main chemical warehouse at the plant caught fire. Sulfur was burning. Its suffocating fumes were blown in the morning breeze toward the town. Many residents were poisoned by sulfur dioxide. One by one, fire crews from nearby cities Houston, Velasco, High Island, Galveston began arriving in Texas City, burning and engulfed in smoke. But even they were unable to help as new fires broke out again and again. The city's radio station was inactive. Through the smoky streets of Texas City, police cars pounded cautiously between bodies and debris. Their loudspeakers pointed out the safest escape routes to residents distraught with smoke and fear. The blast blew the hatch covers off the High Flyer, burning debris fell into the holds, fires broke out, and at 1:10 a.m. another explosion destroyed it and the nearby Wilson Keene. The intense battle with the fire lasted more than 3 days. At dawn on the 4th day, when the flames were out and the smoke cleared, more than 1/3 of the city lay in smoldering ruins in the rays of the peaceful spring sun. 3/4 of all chemical plants had been destroyed in 3 explosions. The Texas City explosion was one of the greatest industrial disasters in American history. The number of victims varies from source to source, but the official number is about 500. There are now several memorials in the city to commemorate the tragedy. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends. Give it a thumbs up. Write in the comments about what else interesting you can tell about this video. See you in the new video.